If you're like me, you're probably a bit uneasy with all the news from around the globe, and that's because there is fighting from all over. We're going to begin right now in Russia, and we're going to talk about what's happening with some of the sanctions that Vladimir Putin has imposed. The question that we have is, does Putin even care? And we're going to ask another question. Which former Soviet state could be the next Ukraine? Let's check in with our expert panel, former White House aide Didi Benke. We also have political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, if you're just joining us. We have Scott Manji and, of course, Tom Squitieri in our D.C. studios. Okay, so we have some sanctions that have been imposed, and Putin says they're going to last a year. This could be a loss of billions of dollars for Western farmers, and it could be a lot of empty shelves for the folks in Russia. What's going to happen here? Anybody want to take this?
I'll start off by just saying Putin does what psychologists call testing the limits. He's going to push because of his ego and because of how harsh he is and his personality. He's going to push the limits, and he doesn't care. He's going to see himself on center stage.
And Didi, you've said that he's going to continue his march elsewhere. What are your thoughts after seeing this last week with the sanctions he's imposed?
Yeah, I mean, I think he wants to be world domination. I mean, and the thing is, you got to give him credit for, he basically is doing exactly what he said he was going to. So no, I think sky's the limit on this guy. I mean, he's a megalomaniac, and he is going to push. And I don't know who's going to stop him. That's the scary part. Who's going to stop him?
I want to ask Tom also, because Tom, question for you: which Soviet state do you think could be the next Ukraine?
I think we have to look in both east and west of Moscow. You look at the Baltics, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. They've always been coveted by Russia, Greater Russia, the Soviet Union, and a couple of them have sizable Russian minority populations, which of course was his pretext for going into Crimea. If you look east into places like Uzbekistan and some of the other stands in Central Asia, similar opportunities, shall we say, for Putin to stir up trouble. But if I had a bet, I would say that the first test would be the Baltic nations, which of course would up the ante considerably since they're part of NATO.
What are your thoughts on Belarus?
If I could jump in.
I want to also ask you about Belarus. I mean, they've got a pretty tough leader over there themselves, and they're starting to pull away from Russia, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, but I look at I was thinking of the countries that may stir more tension and anxiety within the West. Belarus is considered a pariah by most Western nations anyway because of that vile dictator over there. And so the fact that Belarus becomes reincorporated into the Soviet Union, it's almost there in a sense in the way they act and follow foreign policy. That may be a gimme in golf terms, or whatever they call that in golf terms, where you give a free shot. I think the West is more concerned about the Ukraine and further encroachment into Europe. That would be actually a clever tactical move by Putin, who we've all acknowledged is pretty clever and fearless in pushing the limits, as the other guest said earlier. Take something that no one's paying attention of while we're paying attention to other nations.
And Scott, you were just saying something before.
Yeah, the notion that he's going to move into other countries kind of assumes that this is going well for him, and it's really not going that well in Ukraine for him right now. Donetsk has been surrounded at this point. The Ukrainian forces, and the Ukrainian army is not very impressive, or hasn't been. They have shaped up considerably after several reorganizations in the last few months.
Last few weeks, I would say.
Yes. And have started to have effect, as I say, surrounding Donetsk, and this could push Putin into intervening directly into Ukraine, or it could push him into just giving up and blaming the other side for being nasty.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch these latest sanctions, certainly to see what if these are going to have any effect. We're going to go to the next topic, of course, and that's going to be, of course, ISIS, continuing its deadly march across Iraq and continues to slaughter people of other faiths, mostly Christians and Yazidis. Now, as we all know, this is a fight between two branches of Islam. ISIS forces are Sunnis. The Iraqi government is mostly Shiites. Now, yesterday, U.S. warplanes began bombing raids in Erbil, a city of about 1.5 million. But with ISIS at its doorstep, many people are are welcoming these raids. So just to watch all this and those poor people on the mountains, my God, we've never really seen anything quite like that.
I think it's a conflict for not only the United States, but the world, really. And I think the world is not acting appropriately here. I mean, this is a conflict because our nation doesn't want to get into a religious war in another country. We don't want to send our sons and daughters.
We've also pulled out of Iraq.
Right, and we're taking a measured action by the president, which I think is appropriate. But on the other hand, where is NATO? Where's the rest of the world to put the pressure on a real brutality here, a real organization?
Well, the English
that's
and
terrible.
French are helping with the humanitarian aid. But it is a good question. However, we did pull everybody out of Iraq as well. Now, Dee?
Well, of course, I think, the humanitarian aid has to be there. I mean, these people are horrific in what they're doing. I mean, leaving people on a mountaintop to die or they're going to get shot. They
just said the elements. It's
terrible.
Triple digits over there.
Yeah, so of course we should give humanitarian aid. But, a lot of this, this is Obama's fault. I mean, leaving Iraq there for 2 years, doing nothing after he had it stabilized. And then now he's saying, well, okay, we're going to make strikes, but they're going to be targeted, strategic. But hey, we're not giving boots on the ground. I mean, his message is so weak, and his press conference today was just not good. And then he runs off to Martha's Vineyard, so we're not doing our job at all.
Well, it's interesting to also see. And I'm going
Mia,
to.
I think, Mia. Yeah, this is very reminiscent of 1991 when the Kurds themselves had to flee up into the mountains and the onslaught of Saddam. Sinjar Mountain, where the Yazidis are now, is believed to be by many the place where Noah's Ark came to rest. It's a highly venerated site among Yazidis and other religious sects in that part of Iraq. I disagree with Didi a little bit that these strikes are what the Kurds need to have to give them some breathing space and to motivate the Iraqi military to sort of get their act together and do whatever they can.
No, I just think it's not
much
doing
like
enough.
the Ukrainian
Strikes are
military,
good,
they're
but
not
they need
much
to
of
be
a
more.
force to be reckoned with.
Well, they've
saying
also
it
been
should be
calling
more.
for them for 2 months.
I can't hear you.
They've also been calling for those
Yeah,
strikes
too late.
for 2 months. But I do want to also say something else about this. I mean, we talk about ISIS. They grew out of a lot of Chechens. They grew out of Syria. But how did they get so much power? And I want each of us to talk about that as. So we'll start with you, Tom.
They got a lot of power because, as you said, they were fed. They were the group of the month. They were fed by these experienced, lethal, cunning type of terrorists. And each city they take, each town they take, they would swell their ranks, either my way or you die. And then, of course, they've seized currency when they overran some towns, the gold, which funds their activities. And now the irony of it is, in Iraq, they've seized U.S. weapons that were left for the Iraqi military. So they're fighting the Kurds now with the U.S. weapons that the Kurds have begged for and haven't been able to get.
I know there's such irony in that.
We're bombing our own howitzers. Yeah, I just want to say it didn't start in Syria. It actually started in Iraq. This is the group that used to be called Al Qaeda in Iraq, and then it spread from there into Syria and then back again. The U.S. left Iraq because Iraq didn't allow us to stay. We can't set up a country as a sovereign entity and then say, by the way, we're going to stay there whether you like it or not. They may regret that now, but if we were still there, this would still be going on and we'd be caught in the middle of it. The purpose of the surge had been to create a space in which the Iraqis could fix their political problems, and they didn't do it. They were supposed to be reconciling themselves, reconciling the Sunni population, and they did not do that at the time. And as soon as we were gone, the government started arresting the people they're supposed to be reconciling themselves with, driving the local Sunni population into the arms of ISIS, basically.
But of course,
Exactly.
also what happened, when you look at how Saddam Hussein did control the Sunnis, the Shiites, and the Kurds, a lot of people are asking the question whether Iraq was better off with or
Well,
without.
I wouldn't recommend
Probably.
his tactics.
Wouldn't recommend his tactics either, but nation building is not a success that the United States has ever endeavored in. It doesn't happen. And Didi may want to have more troops and more drones and more attacks and more boots on the ground, but Americans don't want their sons and daughters dying in a religious war in another country.
Didi?
Look, these people, yeah, okay, well, the people on the mountain, I mean, that's terrible. Something needs to be done. And Dr. Barr, I don't know what you're talking about. Throughout history, we have helped people out. We have helped countries, nations, but that's exactly what we're all about in America. So I think you're dead wrong on that. And, you know, and unfortunately, there's a vacuum left. So ISIS, these terrible people, have taken over.
Well, I think it's the how quickly they have gone from city to city and almost by surprise.
And they're ruthless. No, they're ruthless. I mean, they did. I mean, they had nothing else. Well, really, I mean, they had no one watching. And whenever Barack Obama just left everything to be, it took them 2 years to take over, and look what's happened. These people are on the mountaintop dying.
People keep stressing how large an area this is that they've taken over. A lot of this is empty. It's not. It's the less populated part of Iraq and the less populated
Well, they're on the
part of Syria.
doorstep of Erbil right now, a city of
but they're not.
1.5 million.
That's true, but and they're in Mosul, which is a sizable place too. But a lot of this territory is empty.
This is a very dangerous group. I think we can all agree on that. And we can't just let them run and like this and behead children and have
But
these
we
atrocities.
can't fix Iraq's political problems if they're
Well,
not
you want
going
to
to
just
do
leave
it.
those people on the mountaintop? No, we can't do
no,
that.
we're
We're
We
going to
gotta do
have to
something.
continue to see whether the airstrikes have any effect this next week. And of course, President Obama addressed the nation today and also did say that Iraqis are going to have to fix their problem as well. So we're going to have to see what happens. All right, we do also want to mention that in Turkiye, there is little doubt that Prime Minister Erdogan will likely win the upcoming presidential election, which will be held tomorrow. His lead in the most recent public opinion polls is in double digits. But what's at stake for the country? And that's the question that we pose to everybody. We have a couple of about 2 minutes. So Tom, we're going to start with you. What is at stake for Turkey right now and the rest of the world, I guess?
I'm going to put an optimistic spin on this one, and I think that I'm going to believe that Erdogan will feel differently when he becomes president, and that he will reach out and become a benevolent leader.
Oh my gosh, Tom! Did you just have a cocktail
I'm
or
actually
something?
surprised he said that too.
No way! I think we should. I think he's mini Putin. I think
I was
he's a
going to say
Putin
he's
wannabe.
Putin-esque if he can.
How kumbaya of you, Tom?
All right, so
Yeah,
Didi-
I rarely disagree with Tom, but on this one, I totally disagree. I think this guy is just going to push as hard as he can, and I think he cheats in elections too. I don't think he has that support. I mean, it's just strange because he does all these things that it seems like the public's not happy with, but then all of a sudden he wins in the polls, which he controls the media. I don't know. I don't believe it. I don't think he's that popular. I don't think he's a good leader.
And we also want to point out that our producer was also telling us also, of course, ISIS still has several of the folks
That's
from
right.
Turkey. 50 people still under
In captive.
Yeah.
Scott, very quickly.
Very quickly, just totally different spin. This is their first elected presidency. The president's always been appointed by Parliament before this. And this sets up a potential conflict when you have an elected president and an elected Parliament and Prime Minister. As is likely to happen, it'll probably be from the same party, but if you get them from different parties, it sets up an immediate clash, as you can see in this country right now. And the parties in Turkey happen to be quite hostile to each other. So.
Well, I hope he goes down the positive road that Tom highlighted, and I hope that Didi's wrong on this one. She probably hopes she's wrong too, but I really think that he's at a crossroads, and he's going to either be a populist, he will be for the people, or he's going to go the other way and be belligerent, and I hope it's Tom's way.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, we're rooting
Sorry,
for you
guys,
right
but
now.
no.
All right, well, we are out of time for this segment, but we are going to travel to the Midwest here in the United States, and we're going to go to Chicago, a city in the United States, and ask the question, could Chicago become the next Detroit? We'll be right back with that question and much more.
Nice lead us.